For my previous job, I took the subway to work daily. I live in New York, and it made more sense than trying to drive to work through all that traffic and then find a parking space. The subway system is sort of complicated, but I would have to take 2 different ones to get to work and back from my place. It took probably 20 minutes total to get there, which was not too bad. When I got off the subway, I would walk a few blocks and then be at my job. One morning, I got onto the subway with several other people. It was really busy on there, which it typically was. When I'm riding on the subway, I usually just mind my own business by listening to music or something like that. When I got off the first subway and onto the next one, there were a couple of other people to do so as well. One in particular that I noticed was a man wearing a large black jacket. I remember him because he also had gotten on the first subway with me that was by my apartment. I rode the subway to work and then got off. The man got off there as well. As I walked to work, I couldn't help but notice that the man was behind me for the whole ways. I got to my work building and the man kept walking down the street. Then it was time for me to work. Throughout the day, I did many things and forgot all about the guy. It wasn't until the workday was over and I walked a few blocks to go down and wait for the subway that I remembered, and that's because I saw him again. There he was, wearing the same thing, waiting for the subway. I had never seen this guy before, but he probably just had another job there like I did. I got onto the subway when it arrived, and the man followed right behind me and then sat next to me. I didn't know why this particular person was bothering me so much, but I just had a really bad feeling. When the subway came to my stop, instead of getting off and boarding the other subway that I would take to go home, I decided to walk around for a bit. This would tell me for sure if the guy was following me or not. When I did, he did the same things as well. He walked behind me wherever I went. Then I went back to the subway to go home. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to get away from this guy. He maintained a distance from me of probably like 15 feet or so. We both waited for the subway, with him sitting on a bench about 20 feet away from the one that I was sitting on. The subway that I was taking to go home arrived, but I didn't want to get on. I knew that the guy would just follow me on, and I did not want him following me all the way to my apartment. I sat there, and I was going to let it pass, but then I saw that the doors were about to close, and an idea came to me. At the very last second, I got up and boarded the subway. I watched the man start to get up, but the doors closed, and we left without him. I was able to make it home that day, and decided that I would take a break from the subway after that. To this day, I wonder what he wanted. Last summer, I traveled on a train for the first time ever. I had to travel a couple of states away, and after looking at flight tickets, I realized that actually taking a train would be better. I was also excited to take a train for the first time as well, because I had never done it before. I packed my bag for the trip, which was only a few days, so I didn't need too much, and then I went to the train station. When I got there, it was early, and I waited for the train to arrive. There were a few other people waiting, and a couple more showed up after me. It was much less crowded than an airport, though, and it was also less crowded than the time that I had taken a subway train. When the train arrived, all of us that were taking it boarded and got to our seats. Inside the train, it was pretty much what I expected, and I sat next to a window in about the middle. About 20 minutes after leaving, I started getting strange texts, though. It was a new number that I had never texted before. They said something like, "Hey, I'm on the train with you." Before I could respond, there was another text. This one said, "You better watch your back." I asked who it was. They didn't answer me, though, and sent several more texts sort of rambling on. The texts were making less and less sense. I got annoyed and I blocked the number. This seemed to work, and I was unbothered for the rest of the train ride. After the train ride, I got off and looked around wondering who had been texting me. Obviously, I had no way of knowing, though. Nobody was staring at me or doing anything strange. When I arrived at my destination, I took a taxi from the train station to my hotel. I got inside and unpacked, and when I was done with that, I saw that I had several missed calls on my phone. I didn't know this number either. Then I saw that I had several text messages as well. It was obviously from the same person. They said that they knew what hotel I was staying at and then mentioned it. I responded to this number asking who this was, but that may as well have been useless. I then blocked that number and hoped that this would be the end of the harassment. After that, I was in my hotel room and about 30 minutes later got a knock at my door. When this happened, my heart started racing. Sure, it could have been anybody, but I just had a bad feeling. I walked over to the door and carefully looked out the peephole. There was nobody there. I went back to doing what I was doing, and then there was another knocking. This time, I ran over to the door, and whoever did it was gone again though. They must have ran away really quickly. When that happened, I packed up all my stuff and contacted the hotel staff. After discussing the situation, I decided that I would stay at another hotel. That's exactly what I did. I did get another text from a new number, but I immediately blocked it. Once I was at the new hotel, I was no longer bothered at all. I never found out who the person was that was stalking me though, and I also wonder why they were doing it. I used to live in a city that had a subway system. That was my main method of getting to and from work from my place for almost a whole year. I don't live in that city or have the same job anymore, but I remember what happened very well. For my job then, I worked all sorts of different hours, so I would be taking the subway at different times almost every day. A lot of times, when you ride the same subway every day, you might see some of the same people, and that would happen to me as well. When I would ride the subway, there was this one guy that I started to notice though. It was probably about 3 months into me getting my job. This guy was always on the subway, and usually within the same area as me. But probably a couple of weeks after seeing him on a daily basis, I realized that this was strange. I would see him no matter what time I was working. It could be early in the morning, the middle of the day, or late at night, and he was always there. He was the only person that I noticed was there every single time as well. There were a few times here and there where he wasn't, but more times than not, he was. I started to think that he just rode the subway all day long or something. I knew he didn't work at my job with me. To describe him, he typically wore some type of coat or jacket and a hat. He must have had shorter hair because I never saw it, and he also had glasses. I do remember he had a slight beard as well. At one point, I had almost a whole week off of work. This was nice because I could rest and do whatever I wanted, really. On probably my 4th or 5th night off though, something strange happened. I was at my apartment and in bed. I wasn't sleeping, but I was watching TV and also playing around on various apps on my phone. The time was probably about 11 o'clock at night. That's when I thought I heard the doorknob to my front door turning. It sounded as though somebody was trying to get inside the apartment. I lived alone, and my apartment was not all that big, but it did open up to the outside. I stayed in my bed and listened. I did not hear the noise again. After a minute or two of not hearing anything, I decided to get up and check. When I walked over to the front door, nobody was there. I went back to my bedroom after that and hoped that one of my neighbors just went to the wrong unit by accident. I myself had done that once before, but shortly after getting back in bed, I then heard a noise at my bedroom window. I jumped up when I heard it. There was like a scratching noise coming from my bedroom window that was only about 5 feet away from me. I got up from my bed and walked over to the window, and when I got there, lifted up my blinds. You guessed it, the guy from the subway was there. When he saw me, he looked away and kind of covered up his face. I had only seen his face for like half a second, but I still knew that it was him. I recognized him immediately. The guy started to walk away to the side of my apartment. I knew that he didn't live here, and I lifted up my window a crack and asked what he was doing. He didn't respond to me, and I watched him then run down the street, and he got inside of a car and drove away. From that day forward, I never saw that guy again, on the subway or elsewhere. I'm really glad that I didn't, but it's a really creepy thing to realize he probably just took the subway to stalk me.